Hi, Melanie Muenchinger here, illustrator for Gina K Designs. Today I'm sharing another project with my newest set from Gina K Designs, Fabulous Frame. The first project I shared a card using it in the landscape orientation. Today I'm going to be turning it to show you one that's portrait style, and if you saw my previous video or any of the beautiful samples made by our design team and guests in the release party, you might be thinking to yourself, well, I already have some oval dies, or I really don't mind cutting out the different layers of cardstock to create this sketch. But what you can't do without the stamp is what we're going to be doing today, which is embossing that gorgeous frame so that you have all those beautiful metallic borders. Isn't that beautiful? I hope the light is picking up that shine for you. And then we're also going to be embossing our main image. To make this project, you will need the Fabulous Frame stamp set, a large block for your frame. A lot of people ask me about different places that you can find this 6x6 block. We will be carrying it in the Gina K Design store, as well as I included some links on my blog and on the YouTube channel. But you can also actually place this directly on a clean, smooth surface and then press your cardstock onto it, or use a Cuttlebug plate if you have one of those die cutting embossing machines. Another block for the flower. Going to be using some Gina K Pure Luxury Lemon Drop cardstock. This is 4 1/4 by 11 inches, scored at 5 1/2, and I'm going to wait to fold that score until after I do my stamping. We're going to use some of the lovely Lavender Pure Luxury from Gina K, and this is just a little scrap that you need for piecing that belly band and for popping up the flower. Going to use some foam squares for popping the flower up, and just a little bit of Easy Dots adhesive from Scrapbook by 3L for putting that paper piecing in. Some scissors. Going to be using some gold embossing powder and this little embossing buddy. This is just filled with cornstarch, and rubbing it over your cardstock before you begin your project is really going to help eliminate those little stray flecks of the embossing powder that sometimes tend to want to stick to areas that you don't have stamped. You'll also need a heat tool, so this is the Marvy heat gun. Going to be using some water-based markers today. I've got the Memento Pear Tart and the Bamboo Leaves, and I like to use water-based markers when I am coloring over an embossed area, just because I don't want an alcohol marker staining that gold border. I want this to stay nice and crisp. But I will be using a few alcohol markers over the lovely lavender paper that I'm using for the flower. So this is the HB1 and the HB3, just to add some shading to those petals. And I don't know if I said yet, the Versamark watermark ink for the embossing, and then the Memento Pear Tart for stamping the flower background. I'm also going to use a little scratch paper just to catch that embossing powder. I find that's the easiest way to keep from making a mess. And then that same mask that we used last week. So all I did was stamp the frame onto some paper and then just cut out these two areas. So before we did it like this, today we're going to be doing it like this. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to place my cardstock right here and just rub the embossing buddy over it a few times. Then I'm going to ink up my frame. Okay, and I apologize if I get my head in here when I'm centering it over this card front. Okay, so just apply some firm pressure, pull it away. I try to avoid touching it until after I have put the powder on and heated it just around those edges so I don't smudge that frame. I'm going to put my scratch paper underneath it and then just pour a little of the powder on. Okay, and then you want to check it, so you might have just a few little stray flecks. Okay. And if you end up getting a little bit of it off the image when you're wiping it, the ink is still really sticky, so you can just put it right back on. Okay, I'm going to set that aside carefully and pour this back into the jar. Save it for later. Embossing powder lasts forever. It really does. I've had this jar for, gosh, about 10 years, I think. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and heat it. And you'll see the powders start to melt. So just keep moving the tool around until you don't see any more powder. It's all shiny and bright. Almost done. Just one little area right there. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stamp the flower into it with that Pear Tart ink. So you're just going to cover up the frame. And you might choose to just emboss the entire thing, and that would be beautiful, but I would still do it in stages, because if you put the powder on or just did the Versamark and then placed the frame on top of it, you could end up smudging that. So I would just go ahead and emboss the frame first, then cover it with the mask, and then do your stamping. So I'm going to do this green today to match the Pear Tart that I'm going to be stamping, or rather coloring into the borders. So I'm just going to place that on there and turning the stamp as I go, just to fill that in and get different parts of the image. And I'm pretty excited about this design. I can see doing it with any of my stately flowers, or beautiful on craft cardstock for a Christmas card with my poinsettia from A Year of Flowers, or even the mistletoe from Stately Flowers 5. Okay, so that's filled in. And now I'm going to take that Pear Tart marker, and I'm just going to quickly fill in this border. And if you've never colored in any embossed areas, you'll find that it's a really easy way to stay inside the lines, because it's like a little curve there. It keeps your coloring in. And so that's why I thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and show you just adding some color with your markers to an embossed image, because so many times I just emboss a greeting or emboss a bold image or just a line art image and then just leave it, because the embossing itself is so beautiful. But you get a really pretty kind of stained glass effect when you add color to your embossed images. Okay, see how much that pops? All right, now let's go ahead and I'm going to stamp just part of my frame onto the purple cardstock. So I only need to ink up this belly band part here, and I'm going to just use the Versamark ink again, because I only need it as a guideline for doing those sections. So I'm just going to stamp that right onto there, pull that away, and then you're going to cut out inside the line. So you want to remove that part because your embossed edge is going to stand out. And so you'll need to cut it slightly smaller. If you wanted to cut around it, then you might choose to go ahead and emboss this area as well. Okay, so that's going to fit right in there. And if you're not seeing enough of your embossing, then just trim it down little by little on each side until you get a nice fit. You don't want to trim too much, because then you'll have to start over. But that's really the only tricky thing about paper piecing if you're trying to place part of it inside of an image, to make sure that you're either getting the line, if that's the look you want, to see that border, or not getting that line. Okay, so just check your pieces first before you put them down. So I'm going to cut just a little bit off this side. So see, I'm just trimming just a tiny bit at a time. Okay, I'm going to cut off a little bit off the top and the bottom, and it's the reason why you have to make it just a tiny bit smaller is because you've added a little bit of width to that line with your embossing. Okay, a little bit more. And if you want, you could have stamped this with some flowers too if you wanted to have a stamped look or a little bit more texture on this piecing. I decided to just have it plain to really bring out that flower. Okay, trim a little bit off of here. Okay. So right inside like that. So see, adding even just one little layer of cardstock, that is really going to make it pop and make it seem like it's multi-layered. All right, now I went ahead and cut out this part of the flower, but I'm going to go ahead and emboss that flower right into the middle of this oval. And I could have done all this in one step, I just kind of forgot about it. So it nests right in there perfectly without having to do any masking if you orient it this way. And I just love how different it looks inside this oval depending on how you turn it. So let's do one more pass with the embossing. And we're going to layer this flower up, so you're only going to see the leaves on this embossed image below. Okay, so let's do it one more time. And you can emboss twice. It's okay if you do this in several steps. You just want to make sure you get all of the powder melted. Okay, and now I'm going to go in with that Pear Tart marker and just fill in right over that. You want to give the powder a moment to dry because it still wants to move around a little bit while it's wet. But see how easy that fills in when you're already using a colored cardstock. So sometimes this is kind of a way just to cheat and not have to add quite as much color, and plus you have that pretty color on the background instead of always just using white. And then I'm just going over this quickly with some of the bamboo leaves. So a lot of times I'll use my watercolor markers or my water-based markers the same way that I would use my alcohol markers, by laying down just the lighter color first, then the dark, and then going back in, and it really does blend. Not as well as the alcohol markers do, but enough to get away with and to create more of a blended look. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and put just a little bit of green in the middle of that flower with the light one, and then adding just some little dots to the bottom of that with the darker bamboo leaves. Next I'm going to use the HB1, the bullet tip, and just trace some of those little lines. So these purples are lighter than the embossing powder, so I don't have to worry about that staining or taking away from the metallic embossing. But see how much that blends in? So it's really going to absorb a lot of this color. So don't be afraid if you start to color and you see that it looks darker than you want. That's to be expected on these colored cardstocks. Okay, and then just a little bit of the darker, the HB3. And so I'm just going around the outline here, just a little bit of shading to add so that it doesn't look flat on this purple. Okay, and then you might want to blend it just a little bit more. Let that fill in. Okay. And then I'm going to add some foam squares to the back and pop that right up over the leaves, so this looks like a very dimensional flower. Just remove the backing. And we're just going to layer that right over the image as if we were paper piecing. And that's it. So you just fold the card. And I'm not going to add a greeting yet. A lot of times when I design a card, I want to wait to add my greeting just because I don't know who I'll be sending it out to yet. I want to wait for that particular occasion. But one trick I really like is to take this image sheet and you can actually lay it right over your card design to see where you want to place that sentiment. So that's another thing I really like about this image sheet. As of today, when I'm making this video, June 30th, this set is currently sold out. We have it on reorder and it will be back in stock shortly. So if you would please subscribe to my blog, my YouTube channel, or even send me a Facebook request, Facebook friend request. I will be placing an update as soon as it is available. So thank you so much for watching this video today. Please visit my blog, Hands, Head, and Heart, for more inspiration. I also want to thank y'all for signing up for my YouTube channel. I got over 1,000 subscribers and I am giving away this set. It's another one of my frames, Inspiration Mosaic, and I know if you love the fabulous frame, you will really enjoy the other frame series in my collection of stamps. Please check my blog to see who won. Thanks so much for watching.